Tampa Airport's weird kind of looking flamingo.
Welcome back, everyone. It's your travel friend Herman. For the past month, I really haven't been able to make any videos or upload anything because I've been busy with work and other things outside of that, but I am glad to be back. And today I have a video of my most recent trip to Boston, where I took my mom to her first time to visit the city to see some of the historical sites of the American Revolution, as well as some of what the city has to offer, including the food. Apart from the huge breakfast that we had while staying at the Westin in Southport and the south side of Boston, the food video is going to be a separate video, while this one is really going to be focusing on the attractions and sites that the city has to offer. The city was a short 3-day trip, but I think this will help you figure out how to plan your itinerary and what are the sites that you can see during a short trip.
First stop of the day is the USS Constitution Museum, but the park around it here, and also the weather today is absolutely perfect. ¿Cierto? Está buenísimo.
Oh yeah.
El clima está buenísimo.
Was, yes.
With Boston, especially if you're a big fan of history, this city is a treasure trove of sites from the American Revolutionary War to visit. Not just some of the museums, but some of the locations that have been there and have been preserved. So we decided to follow the Freedom Trail on this trip, although we kind of did it in reverse, starting off with here in the USS Constitution, which is just outside of downtown Boston, and then work our way into downtown Boston.
You get a really nice view of downtown Boston from here.
And one of the very first things I noticed while touring the ship is that this was a very family-friendly type of a museum, and in part because it's an actual functioning ship. It also has the opportunity to go below deck, so it's very fun for the whole family, especially the kids going up and down from top deck to below deck.
Have to duck down. So here you got the nice broadside of all the cannons. Beautiful ship. The reason why this ship is so well known here is because this is actually the oldest still commissioned ship in the Navy. So the staff that works on the ship, they're still active duty Navy sailors, and the ship has been around since the late 1700s during the Revolutionary War. So that's why it's so it's such a good site to come and see while you're in Boston. I cannot imagine how expensive these townhouses are. I just cannot imagine. Townhouses or apartments, it's hard to tell, but yeah, I know it's really expensive to live here, especially right next to Bunker Hill.
The Bunker Hill Monument, it was built on top of the location where the Battle of Bunker Hill took place during the American Revolutionary War. And though the Battle of Bunker Hill was a British Army victory, it was a significant point in the war because it showed to the British military that they could no longer use the same tactics that they would use against open armies in battle like they would in Europe, and that this was going to be a long, drawn-out war that they hadn't expected at the beginning.
One thing I didn't know is that this doesn't have an elevator. You actually do have to climb it's almost 300 steps. So you do feel it though, but the view up there is totally worth it. So if you don't have a condition or anything like that will impede you from doing it, go for it. It's awesome, and you get a good workout out of it. So yeah, not too bad. The whole area around the monument is beautiful.
And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any future uploads.
This one is Copp's Hill Cemetery. I mean, the reason why it's so why it's well known is also why it's part of the Freedom Trail is because a lot of the people buried here were part of the things like the Boston Tea Party and also the Revolutionary War. So that's why it's still part of the neighborhood and hasn't really been torn down, and it's still very well preserved. Like it's actually very beautiful.
Another part that was interesting along the Freedom Trail was the Old North Church, which is a 300-year-old church right near downtown Boston. Not only was the surrounding area immediately next to the church beautiful and surrounded with trees with a lot of shade, it was all very refreshing, but the interior design of the church was actually very interesting. Though I couldn't take video inside the church because you're not allowed to, I was able to take pictures where you do see the design of having booths for the congregation while the rest of the people who couldn't afford the private booths would sit at the top looking down on the sermon. After leaving Old North Church, I recommend just taking a walk around Little Italy, which is located right next to it. And you can see all the shops, the restaurants, and the whole area really smells very, very good because you walk by all the bakeries, that are located in the area. Another must-visit stop, both if you're a fan of history, but also if you're a fan of interior design, is the Paul Revere house.
Famous Paul Revere house. You almost may not see it because the sign is right there. So
the very original structure was built in 1680 and is the oldest structure in downtown Boston. Unfortunately, you cannot take video or picture while inside, so you must go visit yourself and see how people lived back in the day. And if you're a big fan of shopping, then the Freedom Trail actually does have a place for you because Quincy Market and Faneuil Hall are right next to each other. Quincy Market is more of a food hall, whereas the surrounding two buildings, as well as Faneuil Hall, are shopping malls, as well as Faneuil Hall being an old town center. But even those who are not necessarily big fans of history, I think following the Freedom Trail is really nice because you get to see all the different architecture of the city, where you see some of the old buildings completely nestled in within the modern architecture of the rest of the city. After Faneuil Hall, I recommend stopping by the Old State House and Old South Meeting House. And in particular, the Old State House was the site of the Boston Massacre. In particular, the Boston Massacre was a prelude to the American Revolutionary War, where British soldiers killed 5 American colonists that were protesting the occupation of Boston at the time. And to top off the Freedom Trail, we finished it off with Boston Common, which is one of the large central parks in the city that is also located right next to the Massachusetts State House with its beautiful golden dome. Since we had already finished the Freedom Trail, we started off with Fort Independence. This one is located south of Boston and provides great views of Boston Harbor. Although unfortunately the fort itself was closed, I think it was still worthwhile just to see the great views of the harbor. After finishing with Fort Independence, we headed over to Boston Public Garden. Here, it actually reminded me a lot of being in Central Park in New York City, although a little bit smaller and without as many crowds. And it did have a lot more ducks that weren't afraid of anybody really almost coming up right to them. And since in the city you're going to do a lot of walking, I recommend taking one of the paddle boats that's in the garden. The ride lasts about 10 to 15 minutes, and it kind of gives you a little break from the walking, like I said, and you get to see the water, and you get to be around all the ducks. Next stop is Chinatown Boston, and Chinatown Boston is very small, so it's easy to miss compared to some of the other Chinatowns in other cities in the US. But I still recommend it because you're still going to see a lot of the shops and a lot of really good restaurants throughout the few blocks that comprise Chinatown. And one thing to note about the subway of Boston in this trip is that even though the public transportation of the city is much better than most of the United States, it was still very difficult to use during most of our trip. So when you go to Boston, just plan that you're either going to be walking a lot or you will take Uber or Lyft to some of the locations that you're going to. We also checked out the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. I was very impressed with the museum. I thought it was probably the closest equivalent to the Met that I've been to here in the United States. I couldn't take video, so the only thing I could really share with you guys are pictures. But I definitely recommend checking it out. And please, if you have military discount, like whether you're a veteran or currently in the military, please let the museum know because you are going to save yourself about $30 per person when you go. And last but not least, we finished off with the View Boston observation deck at the Prudential Center. Even though the Bunker Hill Monument provided great views of Boston, this one was also unique because you also get to go from the back end of downtown, so you get to see not only Faneuil Park, or the Cathedral of Boston, if you will, but you also get to see the harbor, I think, a little bit clearly, and a full frontal view of the Boston skyline. Well, this is it for this video. This by no means is an exhaustive list of the things to do in Boston. This itinerary, I think, is very good for a short trip like the one that we had of just 2 days. But if you're going to stay much longer in the city, you can definitely see more things and go out farther into the outskirts of the city. This one is more of a centralized tour of Boston. So thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below what is your favorite area of Boston and when is the next time you plan to visit. And until next time, bye.